Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to show you how to change the brake rotor and change the pads on a more modern car. This one has what's called a floating brake rotor, slightly different setup with the caliper. We're going to actually take all of this off and change it all. What I'm going to do first is loosen the brake line, just so that it's a lot easier to undo when we get the caliper off. I'm going to take the brake pads out, and on a car like this, you loosen the bottom bolt. Sorry, loosen the top bolt and take the bottom bolt right out. And that will just flip up. And you take the pads out, they just pop straight out. The next thing you've got to do, and on this particular car it's a 17mm, is undo the bolts holding the caliper on. Alright. The easiest thing to do is just hang that up there for the time being. Okay, if you remember when we did this on the Jag, we had to pull a whole heap of stuff apart. Well, the only thing that really holds what's called a floating rotor on, and the reason they call it a floating rotor is that there's really nothing much holding it on. These little screws here are really only there so you can put everything back together easily. And take them off, and that rotor just comes straight off. And that's it. Put it back on. It's as simple as just putting it back on. You don't even really need those little screws, but it makes it a lot easier to put everything back together. And don't do these up too tight, because if you can't get them out, it makes your life difficult. If you can't get them out, I found you grab hold of them with a pair of vice grips and undo them. That's the best way I found to get them out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this caliper back on before I take the brake line off the other one, just because you don't get brake fluid everywhere as much. One thing you've got to make sure you do is make sure that is on for two reasons. It's the spring washer, which stops the bolt unrattling itself or undoing itself, and secondly, if you don't put it on there, that will jam the brake rotor. Easier to do this brake line once you've got the other caliper on. If you don't get as much brake fluid everywhere, you're going to get some brake fluid come out of it, but if you take the caliper off, then try and do it with the brake line sitting there loose, you'll end up getting brake fluid everywhere. What you will have to do is push the piston back. These tools are about $20 each to go and buy one of these. Put an old brake pad in there against the piston and just wind it back until it's flush with the top of it. And then you can put the pads in. They just sit in there like that, and this will just hopefully Fold back down. Put the bolt back in. Tighten everything up and job done. A lot easier than doing it on an encapsulated brake rotor. Well, you might be wondering what actually holds that brake rotor on. The wheel holds it on, so once you've done the wheel up, the 4 wheel nuts hold the wheel on, which holds that on. One more little thing, these calipers are actually marked left and the other one's got an R on it for right, but if they're not, like the ones on that Jag, the brake nipple's got to be at the top. If you put the caliper on the wrong side, that will end up being upside down and you'll never get the air out of the system. So that's a technical tip. If they're not marked left and right, the brake nipple goes to the top.